Hello and welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am your host this week, Matt, also known as Hookers in this illustrious company. And with me is my Blackjack, or the Blackjack of all of us. Not my Blackjack. That sounded really possessive. Emily, how are you?
Well, I'm definitely not going to say you're my Hookers, but I'm doing
You could
great.
say
It's
that.
it's good to have the real People's Champions back together, the only podcast duo that was specifically requested in our comments.
Yes, that's right. Because what do the people want more than Blackjack and Hookers, right?
That's what Bender taught me.
Yeah, exactly. Makes every party better. So we're here to discuss another episode of Survivor. You haven't been on in a while, have you?
A couple weeks, I guess. I can't remember anymore. Everything is a blur.
Yeah, time has ceased to have any meaning. But you're still liking the season?
I am. It's been a great season. It's been a lot of fun. Which is exciting. The merge. I think I was last here at the merge.
There you go. Way to pull that one.
So when it was like still interesting, but before like it got real crazy. So It's fun to be back now that we're kind of at the denouement of that craziness.
Yeah, well, I mean, but things haven't stopped moving. We had kind of another big crazy episode, but before we talk about the end, let's talk about the beginning because we had one of our Survivor traditions this week, which is the family visit. So I kind of wanted to use this opportunity to talk about just family visits in general and how they impact the game. But I think you had some thoughts on that first.
Yeah, I mean, it's very great for everyone to get an opportunity to learn about the unique relationship between a brother and a sister.
Right, which is not at all like one between a parent, between a parent and a child.
Yeah, the thing is, neither of them are parents, although something you and I both know, having like significant age gaps with our older sibling, it's like, I mean, sometimes that line is blurred anyway. Yeah. But also it's different. It's very unique. It's so unique that you and I both have brother-sister pairs.
Yes, exactly. It's the only one in the world, except for all the others.
Well, the very common one boy, one girl pairings.
Right.
It's the time where Brope says weird things and fans say, "Oh my God, how dare they miss their families after 3 weeks of complete isolation from anyone they've met before like a month ago."
Emotions are not a bad thing. We don't have to keep them bottled up. We can't all be like you, Emily, and just bottle them up real tight. Some people like me, we're just very emotional. We just let it out. And, it's okay to do that when you see someone who you haven't seen in a couple weeks. That it's okay to engage in emotion.
Okay, first of all, because of that slander, just not crying in movie theaters is like not the same thing as not having emotions entirely. But
I think that's basically the extent of emotions. I mean, that's what they're used for, right? To be able to emote when you're watching movies.
But only in theaters. I cry at home.
Oh, well, you see, that's just shame holding you back. You shouldn't let society rule you like that. Down with the patriarchy, right?
Well, we had a plan and everything.
I know, I'm totally ruining it. I'm killing you.
It's fine. This is why everyone wanted this duo, guys. Right. But the other thing I think that's like legitimately interesting about the family visit is not just seeing like the weird relatives and friends and assistant coaches that people bring in. It's seeing how it always seems to kick people into gear. Not everyone, but very often it's a reality check. This is what being isolated from people does and why people are like, wow, they're crying over Pat. They've only known him for 3 days, or like, whatever, is when like they're so bonded by just the weather, the experience, just not having anyone else to talk to, that becomes their world. It's this like microcosm, that's always about like the original thing with Survivor was like building a society.
Right.
And as much as that's like not what people are doing anymore, it still happens to an extent. It's still a tribe. And then you realize like, oh, wait, like, this isn't the most important person in my life. Like,
Yeah.
this person, you know, who flew out to see me is, and they might not even be the most important, you know, I'm sure, like Angelina, I'm sure her husband wasn't able to come out. I assume he must be deployed, but, or, you know, other people can't come for various reasons. But like these real people in your real life matter, and that's who you're playing for. Even if they're not who you're playing for, it reminds you, it takes you back to your actual world and your life, where this person you've known for a few weeks is not like your best friend forever.
Right. You know, I mean, yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because one of the things about the game is you kind of get lost in the game. You don't have contact with anyone outside of the game except for Jeff Probst, who is there to yell bad innuendo at you during, you know, your most stressful moments of the game. You know, but beside him, the only person you see for the entirety of this time are the people you are playing against. Only the game requires a level of cooperation such that you have to build trust. And that's, you know, we always hear trust is important, trust is the most important, all that stuff. So when you're lost in the game, when you're in the game, you will, I believe, stop thinking entirely selfishly at times, and you will be thinking about, well, you know, what does my alliance have to do? What does my alliance have to do? And the thing about the family visit is it makes people selfish again. And I mean that in the best possible way, because it makes you think about, what do I have to do to win? And whereas, you know, I mean, we saw some of that. We saw both kind of talk before this episode. We saw Nick at the beginning of the episode talking about, you know, the Davids had this all lined up. And then we saw people after the family visit talking about what they have to do. You know, so I think the thing about the family visit is it just throws in relief, you know, it gives you the divide between the us that you have been playing with and then the individual that you have to be to win. And I think, you know, we make fun of it, but I think it is an important strategic event during the course of the show, because I think it's that kind of, it's the beginning of the end game. It's the time when you know you have to kick it into gear if you want to win.
Yeah, and like on the one hand, maybe we don't like it because it convinces Lisa Whelchel that she shouldn't stick with Malcolm, and we like Malcolm, so we want him to go far. But on the other hand, it keeps people from being complacent, and in theory should, you know, convince Laurel, like, oh wait, maybe I shouldn't just stick with these two guys just because they helped me. It's you know, the woman of the hour, Gabby, like her seeing Christian with his girlfriend is not him being like, Christian has a girlfriend, I'm so jealous. It's like, oh, right. Like, he's thinking about other people in his real life. I'm thinking about other people in our real life. Like, this pair isn't the end all be all of things. I need to refocus on what I actually care about.
Right, yeah, and let's nip in the bud the whole Gabby's jealous because Kristen has a girlfriend thing. That's definitely not what's happening, and that's pretty ridiculous that people are saying that. And frankly, it's a little sexist, you know, which is something that I couldn't believe I was seeing, except that I very well could believe I was seeing that out there. No, it's not that he has a girlfriend that, you know, and she's jealous.
With a great name, fact. By the way.
You know, I didn't quite catch it. You know,
I think her name was Emma.
Yeah, that was it. That must have been it. But no, it's instead. I mean, it's instead, as you said, it's because she sees the way he reacted there. She sees that he's not playing for Gabby. He is playing for Christian, as she said, and she has to play for herself too. And she realized that. She realized that, and I think she knew it beforehand. It just made it a little more obvious. It made it a little more immediate. But I do want to highlight some other great moments of the family visit, because John will forever hate me if I don't. So there are two things that stood out in terms of comedy. One was the insane size disparity between Nick and his dad.
His dad's so big.
His dad is small. So big. Like, Nick's probably my size. You know, he's probably like 5'7". You know,
right? And I always like, it's one thing when people always talk about like, oh, Nick is probably athletic, and we're like, are you just saying that because he's like a dude? Like he doesn't. He's a fairly slight young man, you know.
Right.
Like he's not. Like there are shorter guys who are like beefy. Like Rodney's not particularly tall, so it's not even just that. Like he's just
right. But Nick is like short and thin, and his dad was huge. He was tall,
big and tall, as they say.
Yeah, he's indeed big and tall. And I just gotta wonder, like,
that is where he how
did that happen? Talk about the run of the litter there, Nick.
It's fascinating. And the thing is, like, there were some people like, wow, they look nothing alike. Like, no, like if you look at their faces, like particularly their nose, like they have the exact same nose.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That is definitely his dad, you know, his like biological father. It's just
he's just enormous, and Nick is not.
He's so it's just like it really does look like a small child with his dad.
Yeah. And then the other great moment was the continuation of one of our favorite characters in just full, you know, perfect Angelina mode as she's bragging to her mother about the deal she made with Probst, because you know that she is so proud of that deal. You know that if she gets the final 3, she's going to be just regaling the jury with tales of the deal that Angelina made to save them all, and how selfless she is and how good at Survivor she is. And oh, that was beautiful. I love that she's still talking about it.
It reminded me so much of in Caramoan when Brenda sees her dad and she's like, I've been playing so humble, Daddy. And like just keep saying, I'm like, okay. I mean, she's been playing really like invisibly. I guess, you know, she was way less entertaining than she was when she was like the one bright spot of Nicaragua, but sure. Humble. Yeah. And like especially because she was like, look at this selfless thing I did, Mom. Aren't you so proud? I gave up the rice. Let's tell everyone how loving I am.
Well, it wasn't even just like, look at the selfless thing. It was like, it was my deal. I negotiated a great deal and I got the rice, and it was such a good deal. It was just like,
it's Sharon Clueless being like, when her dad's like, wow, you brought your C- all the way to a B? Like, couldn't be more proud if it was based on actual work.
Yes. Yeah. So
I also the just part of being loving is a smaller highlight of the loved ones visit is, you know, burn on Davy's siblings. Well,
that was good.
His mom is like, he's the most loving of all my children. Like I've seen some people saying like as if he like she loves him the most, and I don't think it's that, but it's still a burn because he's just like, oh, he's the nicest out of all of them. My other kids are jerks.
Yeah, no. That was definitely he's the one who actually calls me.
Yes. You know? He comes home to see his mama, other kids.
Yeah. It's like, be more like Davy, okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that was actually pretty good too. I don't really have anything else to say though about the family visit. Do you?
Nope. I guess, you know, well, actually, I'm not sure. I can't remember what your segue was going to be, but, you know,
I was going to make it once you said no, but...
Nope, I have nothing else to say about the loved ones visit.
Well, good then, because I want to talk about what took up most of the rest of the episode, which, of course, was, you know, the scrambling and then the vote. But before we get there, I want to talk about the target of this, which is Christian. So... Christian has been talked about for many weeks now as a threat. And he's been talked about, you know, I mean, and this is by everyone in the game. So I wanted to just talk about, before we discuss the attempt to vote out Christian, which did not work this week, why is Christian such a threat?
Yeah, I think with Christian, I mean, he clearly has a great social game. You know, I'll say that off the bat, like full credit to that. Everyone seems to really genuinely like him. And I mean, as sort of Nick said, they use 3 advantages, to save the David numbers, but like specifically to save him. Like they obviously weren't going to do that for Elizabeth. You know, they were willing to just vote her out. But I think the other thing with Christian, and I feel like we've seen this on Survivor to an extent before, is that it's really just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the Goliath decided Christian is the biggest threat. We have to target Christian. And then he was able to survive that. And so by surviving those weeks, it's like, wow, he was a threat that was targeted this whole time. What an impressive player. When, like, besides the social game, which again, like, let us not discount, is like an incredibly important part of Survivor. But like, until he played the idol, had he even really made a move? Like, you know, Carl, that was Gabby's move. And like, I guess the fact that he knew how to play an idol again was that Davey felt compelled to tell him. So it's really, it's the social game.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that Christian's being singled out for his social game when there are other people still in the game that seem to have bonds with lots of people and that seem to be playing a very good social game. I would say Nick is playing a very good social game. I think that's been the kind of game he's playing where he does seem to have bonds with lots of different people, but he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere near the attention of Christian that Christian has. And I think it's like you said, Christian went across tribes early and a bit more. And so when the Goliaths were first choosing that target, it was Christian. And I think that's because Christian was close with some of the biggest decision makers in the Goliaths. He was close with John. He was like part of the Brochachos, or I guess he was an honorary Brochacho.
Right.
But he was close with John and Dan. And that threatened some people in the Goliaths. So to them, he was the biggest threat on the Davids for that reason. And then, as you said, once you fail to vote out a big threat, not once, not twice, but now thrice, he becomes an even bigger threat. Every time someone survives an attempt to vote them out, they, amplify their threat, and it doubles or triples. And it's something they can hang on their resume because they can say, you were trying to get me out and you couldn't. And that's like one of the most compelling arguments, I think, to make at the end, which is you all recognized I was a threat. You tried to vote me out multiple times, and I'm still here, and I'm still talking to you. And I think, like you said, it kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy, which in a way works out well for Christian, because if he can get to the end, it should be pretty easy for him to win, but it also makes it very much harder for him to get to the end.
Yeah, I think it shows sort of when he was targeted that first time, he's like, wait, why am I being targeted? I haven't even done anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that again shows that.
But now that he has been, that's what he did, was not give
exactly. He has avoided being voted out now multiple times, and because he was the target, he is able to claim a lot of the credit to that, even when it was other people's advantages or other people's initial ideas being used, like Carl voting out, Gabby voting out Carl. She pointed out, like, Christian's going to get a lot of the credit for this. And I think that's true because Christian has survived multiple votes and he's seen as the shot caller because of that. Survival gives you that ability. And I also think Christian was probably one of the leaders of the Davids at the merge anyway. So I think he was one of the loudest voices in that room anyway. So.
Yeah, although I feel like less so than, usually in duos, it's like, oh, so-and-so will get the credit. And usually in those instances, it's that person is playing in front. Like, right. Dom and Wendell were essentially tied. But of course, they were going to get the credit ahead of Laurel because they were doing more. They had advantage, yada, yada. Yeah. She was the vote they tried a lot. Whereas Gabby is saying, and I think it's, I think it's true, although there are sort of ironically, I think more people have been feeling betrayed by Christian than were like like we saw Nick didn't seem particularly hurt by Gabby, but was very bothered that Christian betrayed him. And then, exit interviews, grain of salt, obviously, but Carl seemed much more betrayed that Christian flipped than Gabby, because I think he had to admit, he's like, well, I did like not tell her the plan.
Right. Yeah.
So it's possible in theory, that those are two votes he might not get. And when she's saying like, oh, Christian's going to get all the credit for these moves, it's possible, but it's not, I don't think he necessarily should. Whereas in a lot of those instances of a pairs, it's like, well, yeah, because it like, even if they're kind of a team, like a Yul and Becky, it's like, yeah, but Yule had the idol. There's a reason they're above.
Yeah.
And
also Yule was the one who had the conversation with Penner, which is,
right.
I think,
like
the big moment there.
Yes, exactly. Like, there's always like that reason, but what is the reason Christian should get the credit for voting out Carl?
Right, and there is no reason there.
Exactly.
I mean, but the reason why he should and the fact that he is, I think, are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a perception on the island that was Christian's move. But before we start talking about, I don't want to go back and relitigate Carl, because I want to move forward so that we can talk about this tribal. But
mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about, there was a lot. Excuse me, I had a frog in my throat there. There was a lot of different plans going into this tribal. There was Christian, obviously was trying to save himself. Gabby was trying to vote out Christian. And then Nick and Davey both had similar but different plans. Nick, I think, wanted Christian out, but he had a backup plan in mind, which was Gabby. And Davey wanted Christian around further. So I kind of wanted to break down all of these four people's plans, because I think it's interesting to examine, the people with the most agency at this point in the game, the people that are driving the action, or at least this episode that were shown to be driving more of the action. And you brought up Nick earlier and how Nick was hurt. So let's talk about him first. Yeah, as you said, Nick started off this episode and he was, full on, how dare you betray me type of thing. And he never got over that during this episode, did he?
No, mate, the Mason-Dixon line is broken.
Yeah, who would ever have thought that, the South would fight the North? I mean, that's unthinkable, but it's happening. So, so what do you think of Nick's assessment of Christian's actions?
Well, I think, in one, obviously he was working fine with Carl, so he didn't have a problem with Carl being bossy or whatever. He also kind of has a point in regards to, like, they worked so hard and used so many advantages to have the numbers on the Goliath, and then at the first time they had like a clear majority, they flipped and got rid of a David. So now they're tied again. But he also, I mean, once you see that final four, I fully think, and I think I've heard there's a secret scene that says as much. I haven't watched it yet. But I fully expect that Nick is trying to go to the end with Angelina and Mike. So he's sort of saying like, oh, but the Davids and our numbers, well, like fully intending to go to the end with two Goliaths. So it's one of those things where like, how dare you go against this thing before I got to?
Yeah, no, Nick there was very much, mad because his plans got a little knocked off course. He's, every time he said like, it's like, this wasn't what was best for Christian. I don't understand it. It's like, the thing though was Christian was being frozen out. You guys would have targeted him really soon. If not this vote, they might have targeted Christian this vote or maybe the next. But the point is like, they weren't keeping Christian around that much longer. And Christian knew that, he knew that he was being frozen out of the Davids. Nick's talking about like, I don't understand this could be good for Christian's game because the move that Christian made wasn't good for Nick's game.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, but so he then comes into tribal and he's trying to knock out Christian and I guess the question is that what Nick should have been doing here?
Yeah, because interestingly, I think he and Davey are in very similar positions in the game. Although I will say Nick has more of the advantage with his, ties to Angelina and Mike, which like we'll get to this, but that Davey, astutely pointed out that they were on the same swap tribe, which I gotta be honest, like I totally forgot. Like I just forgot about the swap era.
Well, I remembered that Mike was with Nick. I forgot about
Angelina, I remember honestly. That because the rock stars, but like I just kind of I don't know, the swap stuff like was pretty short. It just kind of blended in. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, that whole group, like you do because I was like, it's two Davids, it's two Goliaths, blah, blah, blah. But Yeah, so they're sort of in similar positions in that they've both played advantages. They're both Davids.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have about, I think, the same level of reason they would be targeted. Davy maybe one more because he's won an immunity, but so they
but
both.
Nick also has an extra bit of safety because he has an idol. And the thing about Nick's whole plan, which is let's go let's get out Christian, Gabby, Allison, Kara, is that even if someone's going to turn on you at some point, you got that idol. And and Nick
there's only so many votes left with
exactly that. No one's going to turn on you after one vote. They'll probably do it after two, in which case, well, you then would only be having two chances left to play the idol anyway. So I think for Nick it made sense to target Christian, but it also made sense to go after Gabby as a backup plan.
But it was a very, I was bummed to see it happen to her just because it sucks when a plan blows up in your face like that. Yeah. But it was a really, especially when it's like, hey, will you guys help me vote this person out? They're like, yeah, sure, but you're going to be our backup plan.
Yeah.
That's a bummer, but it's genius. It's a very smart idea.
Especially because, look, if it's not Christian, look who among the other four has been most active in driving decision making and strategic decisions, and it's Gabby. Allison and Kara are not doing that to the same level as Gabby has been, and Allison and Kara really only have each other to. They certainly don't have Angelina anymore. Maybe there should be some worry they can pull Mike back. Mike seems to be playing a bit of a floater game, and I don't think people realize how wishy-washy he might be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Gabby's the one who you worry about doing something bigger. And
Plus, they know for a fact that Christian has the idol.
Exactly.
So, why just wait and see who Christian targets?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. You don't want Christian to pick the target. You pick the target. And you know that everyone else's vote's going on Christian. So you don't have to worry about that aspect of splitting your votes. So, so for Nick, this made perfect sense. But I also think this move made perfect sense for Davey because Nick probably didn't care if Christian played his idol or not. I think Nick probably would have been happier if Christian had gone home. Mm-hmm. But to him, it's good either way. He either gets rid of the idol or he gets rid of Christian. But Davey wants Christian in the game because Davey doesn't have the ties that Nick has. He doesn't have as tight an alliance partner beyond Nick. And I think he knows very well that Nick would rather go to the end with other people. So Davey's path to the end has to constantly be, I need other people to get targeted other than me. I'm going to have to slide through some votes. And the way to do that is the Tony, meat shield strategy, which is you got to hold up another target for other people to go at. And I really, really, really like this move for Davey, especially because I love the fact Davey still voted for Christian. I always love stuff like that where you're like, oh yeah, I really don't want you to go home. You should do this, and then you still vote for them. It's just
like Malcolm voting for Reynolds during the Hold Up Pro Tribal Council.
Oh man, that was so good.
Stone cold, I love it.
Stone cold. So it's I like when that stuff happens. I thought this was a great Davey episode. We'll probably talk a little bit more about him in a minute because I think we're both fans of Davey.
Yeah, I also just almost even from an attitude perspective, yes. Carl going home hurt Davey so much more than it hurt Nick, and Davey was so much more chill about it.
I know, it's actually really interesting because Carl was Davey's number one ally.
Guy. Yeah, he had been with him the whole game except for the night at Exile Island or whatever.
Yeah. And I don't think Davey had anyone else that he was as close with as Carl. And I think Davey even talked about earlier in the game how hard it was for him to bond with people because, the people that he's interacting with are very different from those he normally does. So but he's doing really well. And, I've been just really impressed by his ability to think through his positions. We saw him think through the advantages they had. And, we know we got a secret scene of them, trying to reason out all of them. We got one of Davey talking about them. But even tonight, he's like, Nick's plan's not the best for me. I want something slightly different. Gabby's plan isn't the best for me. I want something slightly different. And he found a way to make this night go off the best possible night for him.
And you know what? We were just saying he hasn't had like a close partner because Carl is gone.
Yeah.
Well, now Gabby's gone and he just saved Christian's life.
Yeah, so
who do you think Christian's close to now?
It'll be really interesting if Davy and Christian start working closer together because, they might be able to do stuff together. They might be able to get some people on their side and do stuff. Or they might just find themselves at the bottom of the 7. It's hard. It could go either way.
Yeah, the season. I mean, the game is at like a really interesting spot. Even with like the next week on Survivor thing, like they named just about everyone as a potential target.
Yeah. I mean, I think pretty much everyone but like Kara, and
I think Mike and Angelina because
because Mike and Angelina are obviously at the bottom. Okay, so let's talk about Christian. Because Christian did something that some people found a little controversial, which is he waited till Jeff started to talk before he. Yes, this is very stupid. Okay, thank you. Okay, look, I understand the idea that you want things to be fair. Okay, but look, Christian waiting for Jeff to say okay before Christian spoke up and was like, oh wait, no, Jeff, I need some more time to think. He's not getting an unfair advantage from that. Look. Jeff has not started reading the votes. Christian is literally... I don't think he'd even open...
And the thing is, too, like, it's an indeterminate amount of time.
Exactly. It varies every time. Sometimes, sometimes I'm sure it's 20 seconds. Sometimes I'm sure it's like 40 seconds. Jeff is just reading the room. He doesn't have a stopwatch out. He's not like... He doesn't say you have 30 seconds to tell me whether you're going to play an idol. No, he is,
let's think how long, Dan had because he had like Angelina being like, you have to play. Like they waited like forever. And that's like after you've heard an idol is very like, and it's not like a special advantage to be able to see people react. Like you also get to see people react when you stand up and play the idol and look at their faces or whatever.
Exactly.
Like if you don't want, like if you react with a sigh of relief once Jeff said okay, that's on you, man. You need to have some chill.
How many times do we see people save their reactions until the name is pulled from the urn? They want to save it for the moment when the person whose name comes up is reacting.
Like maybe you'll see like a sly smile behind, like, oh, phew, like it's gonna work, but you don't. Like you wouldn't have Gabby like right next to Christian be like, oh, thank God he didn't play the idol.
And here's the thing. I think Christian was already going to play the idol that night. I think there was enough tells throughout the episode beyond the fact that Davey told him they were voting for you. I think there was enough tells in the episode, and I think Christian was processing those, and I think he was processing what was happening at Tribal Council. Because the one that stood out to me was, and I don't know if you noticed this, but during the immunity challenge, you know how they told a few people, like, oh, you're getting a little high, you're getting a little low? When Christian was asking, no one responded to him. Yeah. Which, Gabby would have responded to him 3 days ago. And
like, we don't want to mess you up.
Right. And trust me, Christian thought about that when Davey told him. Christian probably was replaying all of their conversations after Davey told him. And, he was just mining some drama out of it because Survivor's a TV show. It's here for entertainment. He knows that we like long pauses. He knows Jeff likes long pauses. He knows we like to make the moment bigger than it is. It's like, it's just for TV, people.
Yeah. Also, as big of a mistake and like as a tell, especially when he has an idol, as big of a tell as it was for like Angelina and everyone to be like telling Nick about, his or like whatever you call that contraption. I did think it was a decent like walk back when they didn't mention when it was really precarious with Kara.
Yeah.
And I think it was Allison was like, oh God, like, I don't want to say anything because then I think she knows, like, I can't say it to two people. Like, if we can just be like, oh, his was just really close. We were just being nice. But like,
Yeah.
If it's like, if I say it to, those are the kind of things you do when it's just like Abby Maria or whoever is like the last one standing of another alliance. It's Troyzan in One World. Like everyone knows it's all against that one person. Then you do the blatant that you don't do that when you're blindsiding someone with an idol.
Yeah. But so we should talk about the last of the big movers this episode, the last of the big people this episode, which is Gabby. And I'm sure we have a lot to say about Gabby, but Gabby decides this episode to take out her number one ally, Christian. She decides this is the time to do it. What do you think of that decision?
Well, so we've basically been sitting with this for over a week because of the previews from last week, right? So when I first saw it, I was kind of like, I get the instinct. At first it felt maybe a little too soon for me, but then I'm thinking about it, and it's so tricky because she knows he has the idol, and there's the Final Four fire making now. And
which means that you now have to get Christian out by 5.
Yeah, or really before that, you have to do it at 6 at the latest. So that means and then, people start to see it coming. You start to, expect it. There's also, potentially like, hey, there have been times where people aren't rewarded for voting out their ally. Then it's like, wow, how could you win a betrayal? But it, it kind of depends on who the players are. This group doesn't seem like maybe Dan, but Dan's, dumb. So,
I also think Carl might hold that against people too, but it's hard to
tell. But you're not going to have the majority, especially for a big jury like this. A few votes isn't a big deal. Like you and like we were talking about, or I was talking to someone, I can't remember, about Game Changers, how like it started to seem like in the exit interviews, like, oh, you had Sierra hating Sarah, you had Debbie hating Sarah, like, ooh, I don't know if Sarah can really win. And like, no, she just didn't get those people's votes, but she got enough because it was a big ass jury. And we have had kind of a string of a lot of unanimous decisions at the end. So you kind of start to see it that way of like, oh, well, everyone's going to vote for Adam. Everyone's going to vote for Jeremy. You don't need everyone to vote for you.
You just need enough people to vote for you.
And so we thought at first, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Natalie Anderson wouldn't go to the end with Missy and Baylor where she'd get 100%. And she's like, I can let Missy and Jacqueline get their loved ones' votes. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'd rather guarantee to get there. And that's the thing. Like, Gabby needs to get there. She very likely needs to get there without Christian, even if some people might be, hurt by him or whatever. Yep. And what I think is the smartest part about it, because so you're not always rewarded for voting out an ally. Maybe it's a betrayal. But the thing is, Gabby knows she's being perceived as emotional because she is emotional, which, that's who she is. That should be fine. But she knows as a fan that especially women are often judged for being emotional and for crying out. So she knows that's her perception. So she has to fight that. So how do you fight that perception? By doing something cold-blooded.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and here's the other thing. And this is something that this podcast has long believed. This is something that John and Andy talk about all the time. How many times has Andy said this? You have to get someone while you can. It's better to move early than late. And if this is not the moment, next week might be too late. Christian he won immunity.
He's won an immunity. He
this week he came in second. He's been doing actually very well.
Puzzles also are often at the end.
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt,
there's a puzzle coming. Yeah. There's a puzzle coming. So here's the thing. Christian has an idol. He might win a future immunity. If not now, there might not be another time. You have to get them. Andy says that all the time. You have to get them when you have the chance. And, I don't really understand people saying like, oh, well, this is too early. No, it's not. The time to get someone is when you have the chance to do it. And here's the other thing about it. The show's more entertaining when people play that way.
This is true.
I don't know why you want a show where someone is waiting to make a move. Because what happens when people wait to make a move is they never make a move? When did Laurel make her move? She never made the move. So if you want a show full of laurels, yeah, this was the wrong move by Gabby. She shouldn't have done it, you know?
And, oh, sorry, you might have still been going.
No, you can.
I just had another part of it too. Is you know, there are people are like, and this happened with Laurel. Like, oh well, why should Laurel vote with Desiree and the other Malolos? Like, what's her path to the end after that? It's like you don't have to have a complete. You know, you're supposed to be flexible in the game. You don't have to have like a completely clear path line because things like immunity challenges happen, autoplays happen. Sometimes you got to figure something out. And yeah, maybe it would be a difficult path to the end for Gabby after, but she has a higher chance of winning if she gets there than she did with it.
And I want people to play to win. I don't want people to play to get to the end, you know, and, you know, I don't think that is fun. Play to win the game. If you know someone's going to win, if they get to the end with you, you should be trying to get them out. You know, this was the problem with Redemption Island. Everyone on that island knew Boston Rob would beat them. No one tried to get him out. And, you know, some people might be like, oh, well, that's because of Boston Rob. Well, it's also because of the people that he was playing with, because they never tried to get him out.
And yeah, would she have had a more difficult path to the end? You know, is it like, oh, who is she bonded with? Because she only had a bond with Christian, except for, you know, Allison, and she seems like decently close with Kara. Well, like she has to, you know, you got to do something, and like she could have maybe, you know, worked with other people eventually.
Mike voted with them last week against everyone else.
Everyone keeps acting like Mike's not with them, and he voted with them.
They probably still think that Mike is with them. If they take out Christian now, she probably thinks her 4 is her, Kara, Allison, and Mike. And guess what? She could win that 4.
That's not a bad group for her to go against. Like this is all talk of who could Gabby beat? Who could Gabby beat? Well, if that's already the problem at 8, like, okay, so she can't win. Should she just not try? Or should she try to make moves that maybe get her to a point where she can win? Like,
absolutely.
What, you know, everyone is saying, like, oh, what has Allison done to be deemed as a threat? First of all, it's been tall. Yeah. That's what she is. She's tall and she's good at puzzles. It's not that big a deal. Just let it go, guys.
You want to know why she's called Wonder Woman? It's because she's tall. It has nothing to do with the fact that, you know, that she is the best woman at challenges. Because Kara's better than her. It's because she's tall.
She's tall. And you know what you can't do with height?
Can't teach it. Can't teach height. Sorry, Mike Hirsch. You can't teach height.
But yeah, like she could potentially win against that. You know why? Oh, but they view her as so emotional. Maybe they don't if she just cuts the people she was working with and gets to the end. We haven't seen it. Maybe she wins an immunity. You know, she's not terrible at the challenges.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
it's very evident from the chatter during the jury that Dan is like definitely going to vote for people who do well at immunity challenges.
Yeah. Which is funny because no one's won more than one. It's so
and he's probably not voting for Kara. So like, there you go. You already could work with that. Yeah, I think she was definitely in a tough spot. She's definitely between a rock and a hard place, but she did what she felt she had to do. I do think she could have done better. I do think she could have done a better job.
I was about to bring that up because I think the mistake she made is not the plan itself. I think the mistake she made is telling literally everyone on the island to vote for Christian because that gives them too much power.
Then they know to split the vote on. Exactly. If they think they have a minimum amount of people, maybe they can't split the vote.
Right. Exactly. You don't tell Nick. You tell Mike if he's with you. And if you think Mike is floppy, you tell maybe one other person. But telling Nick, you know, I think is what invited is what blew back on her. I think that's the mistake she made.
Also, I have a couple things. I agree. Tell Mike because, again, he just voted with you. And you know that he would be fine targeting Christian. Like, they've done it before. Same with Angelina. Okay, but Gabby has said in her exit interview that she and Angelina didn't get along. Well, guess what? You don't have to be the one to tell the plan. Tell Mike, who is now established because of the loved one's visit as a close bond to Angelina.
Yeah.
Have Mike tell Angelina.
Well, I mean,
Like,
yeah, I mean, and I think this is the other downfall of Gabby. Gabby needed the credit here. And so she went about this vote in a way that made sure that if it worked, she would get all the credit. She didn't allow Allison and Kara to share that credit with her. Like, they could have talked to Mike or Angelina, but she was the one that did it because she needs everyone to know that this is her decision. And I think there are both strategic and emotional reasons for that.
yes, and I think while I get, obviously she needs to get the credit because if it's seen as someone else's move, that doesn't help her.
Right.
But you don't have to get the credit at the beach.
Correct.
Get the credit at tribal council. It's like why, as you could see it as being annoying, but why I think her and Allison and Kara doing the like bing thing was actually a great idea because it signals the same reason I think it was good when Carl did it, because it signals this was my move. This was our move. We did
also
that.
It's a super entertaining. So,
yes, and again,
show.
We like the entertainment.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. But she can, Christian goes home. She can be like, she can say as he's going, Christian, I'm so sorry. Like, I love you, but I had to do it. And then boom, everyone knows she did it. And not to mention, obviously, there's talking at, when you're at Final Tribal, but we all know they usually have decided beforehand. But still, you can, if people are thinking, oh, it was a joint thing, and then you can say, I knew I didn't have a relationship with Angelina, so I had Mike say that. Like, you can address, especially in the new kind of round table method they have now.
Exactly.
The other issue I had, though, is not just telling Davy and Nick, but the way she told them. Not in a, because she did not need to give them her rationale of why it's a good move for her.
Yeah.
Like, she's telling them, yes, I need to vote out Christian because he's getting all the credit for my moves and blah, 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 and and our moves and stuff. Because first of all, she's made moves with those two. Like, in fact, they were more in, on that split vote to get rid of John, which was a huge move. Yep. So that signals, I can't go to the end with you guys.
Right.
But it also, you're giving them reasons why it's good for you, not why it's good for them. You have to be like, look, guys, I'm sorry. We don't know what really, how much she talked to them after the Carl thing, but, go to the, I'm sorry, it's not against you guys. It's just, I was clearly left out. I was clearly at the bottom of the David, so I had to do something, but I do still want to work with you. I don't think we necessarily need this, David versus Goliath thing, because don't we all agree, Christian is so clearly the threat. I think that, everyone's going to view, everyone sees him as masterminding this blind, so the time is now. Also, you can avenge Carl.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could, right. There are any number of reasons you can give why it's in their interest. But yeah, you're right. She gave the pitch from her own interest and she volunteered her own interest without them asking. It's one thing if they're like, why would you vote out Christian? And then you're like, look, this is why.
Which is why I can kind of forgive it for her saying that to Allison and Kara, because Allison and Kara are Goliaths, and she voted with them last time. They're going to, and they all voted together. She flipped with Christian to them last time. I could see them being like, I don't know. And Allison had just been the target. I'd be like, maybe you're selling us a bill of goods, But if she's saying you know what, this is why, this is the reason I need to do it. And it's kind of a bonding thing, talking to the other women of I need to do this because we all know the man's going to be the one to get the credit and blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, oh, yes, I totally get that. And Kara's like, yup, I got rid of Dan.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's move on from Gabby because we've been talking about her for a while. I want to talk about, since we just saw the anti-penultimate episode of the season, we're near the end. We got 7 people left. What are you hoping for as the season winds up? What are you hoping to see for the end?
Well, it would be pretty awesome if Christian managed to get his way to the end, because if he doesn't get voted out, that means cool things are happening.
Yep, probably true.
How's he getting there? I would like to see, Nick has sort of felt like a possible winner, and even though I know you have said that, and even though he's made some good moves, I think it's one of those things where I'd kind of like to see something different.
Yeah.
Also, especially because the whole like women haven't found an idol. So I liked the idea of it being, you know, when we were all sort of thinking like, oh, maybe it's Gabby, Allison, and Kara at the end. Like that would have been really cool.
Work out. That was
it didn't. But I honestly, and I could see it, I wouldn't hate a Kara win.
Okay.
It kind of seems like it could have like that's sort of the dark horse, like Michelle was one I'll edit candidate, but like better than like a better player.
Yes, I would as the resident Purple Rock Michelle hater, I would be much happier with Kara winning that.
Yeah, I want to say that is no shade on Kara. That's just sort of in terms of because I don't think Kara would be facing someone of like an Aubrey, you know, and that it would be someone who rubbed someone the wrong way or just didn't do as much.
Right. Now, if Kara beat Gabby in the final, I could see myself kind of like a little upset at that in potential because I think Gabby would have made more moves and but that would have blown back on her. But you know, with the people that she would be likely to get to the end with, I would have no problem with that. You know,
if I could say one other thing real quick, and then you could go. Is that I think the last time I was on, I talked about how like I was, you know, Angelina's super entertaining, but maybe it's starting to, you know, hit that point where it just starts to be like annoying, sort of like that. I have completely switched that. You know, I think
more Angelina.
Yeah, I think the Goliath losing their majority just made her, you know, Angelina not being fully in power, but like kind of grasping for it is a great Angelina. I am all about it. I definitely want to see her at the end thinking she's definitely going to win, making these passionate arguments, and then realizing as tribal council is happening that she's definitely not going to win, or better, still not realizing it until the finale. Like, I mean, if we're really wishing, let's go with that.
Yeah, and honestly, like I kind of feel like we're past the point where Angelina would be going beforehand. Like I feel like she's a lot for Final Four. You know, like I mean, it's just. I mean, who's getting rid of Angelina this early? She's not. I mean, she is. Everyone has to know that people don't like her on the island, that people kind of think she's ridiculous. I mean, I'm totally with you. At one point, I was starting to get tired of Angelina, and you're right. Angelina going to the bottom has introduced an entirely new dynamic to the fun that is Angelina. It's like you get social climber Angelina now, and she is grasping, you know, for relevance that is beyond her, and it's. Oh man, I find it so funny and it's so entertaining. You know, I need as much of this as I can because it's something that, you know, you can't repeat this type of character. You can't repeat this type of, you know, like, I mean, just like everything about her that makes her entertaining. I don't think you can repeat because you get too self-conscious about it. If she were to ever come back, she wouldn't be the same. And that makes me sad.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think she pretty much has a ticket to the final three. Obviously, with the way fire making works, you never really know.
Final Four there.
But I think yeah, Final Four for sure. Because for one hand, there's if the loved ones visit like 4 actually sticks together, fine, you're good there. Yeah. If not, there's only 3 on the other side, and they're only like loosely connected. Like Christian's basically on its own now. Like and Allison and Kara are a pair. Those are all people who would easily be like. You know, they target Nick, they target Davey, and then she's just left over.
Right. So maybe she goes at 5 at the earliest if they you know like
that's if they're like, ooh, what's harder, like Angelina's unlikability or Mike's money, like which is
exactly. Which you know, and Mike's general, you know, uselessness as it seems. But so what I'm hoping for is some of the similar stuff. I also think that if Christian got to the end, I found myself liking Christian a lot, so I'd be very happy.
I like him a lot.
Win. You know, if he got to the end, I think it would be a pretty interesting path, unless it's just a bunch of immunity wins, which it could also be.
Which honestly, for that kind of character, would still be kind of fun.
Hey, Cochran won 4 immunities during his run to the win at in Caramoan.
Sure, the one with an advantage.
Sure. But, you know,
was it 4 immunities?
Yeah, he won 4 immunities.
Wow, that's a lot.
Or maybe it was 4 challenges, and some of those were rewards. But he did win a lot.
Because the food eating challenge, that's got to be reward, right? I feel like they don't do that for immunity.
I don't remember, but he won. Okay, he won 4 individual challenges. Let's put it out there that way. But the other one I'd really like to see is I'd like to see Davey win. As we mentioned, I'm a big fan of Davey. I really liked his thought process this episode. I've liked him all season, and I think as we've seen him, have agency and also have an awareness of his own individual game that is refreshing, because he has never forgotten the distinction between himself and his alliance. And I think Davey navigating his way to the end would be both. I think it would be interesting, but I also think, Davey's, it would be really cool to see Davey win, because I feel like he has been walking a very tough road, because he has not had the easy time bonding like everyone else has. And so he's had to play just a very different type of game than other people have had. And I think that, he has played his game about as well as you could. The criticism of Davey would be that he doesn't have the bonds that other people have. But, sometimes you don't form those as easily. So you have to navigate what you have. And I think Davey has navigated his situation very well. I would like to see how he would get to the end if he could. And maybe it's just he sticks with that 4 and then he wins fire. Because I think Davey might actually be good at fire. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we haven't really seen what people do with fire. And you know what? That was a total oversight on my part. I totally agree. I would love to see Davey win. I think one of the reasons I didn't say anything about it is Davey is also a very fun character.
Yes.
But we haven't, and not to be like too edit ready, like he's a super fun character, but I don't think we've seen like a ton of him. And I was not someone who's like, oh, he wasn't in the merge episode, there's no way he wins. But I think at this point, we maybe would have needed to see a little more for someone like him. Like, I don't think Kara's gotten a big edit, but they're very different character types.
I mean, I
if he does win, then I'm mad we didn't see more. He does.
Because we sometimes see small moments from Davey that are great and that I love. One of my favorites is when he flicked up his jacket after what was that, the John vote maybe?
It might have been the Dan vote.
Okay.
But yeah, like I genuinely
that was such a great little move. Or his wrestling, confessional after they voted out John.
That's really the thing. Good. He's so funny. And maybe it really has just been in those little bits, when he's inspired by something, and that's why. But like, I'm like already annoyed we haven't seen more Davey, and so if he wins like that, then I'm like really annoyed. So I think that's sort of why I feel like it might not happen. Plus, it's kind of a tough path due to that lack of relationships that he has. But no, I agree. I would love to see it. He's super fun. I think he'd be fun to bring back. Like, he's great. All about Davey.
Okay. So what is something you are dreading? What would be your worst possible ending to this season?
Everyone gets medevac.
Well, yeah, okay. What's your okay? I mean, okay, so let me begin. So we're talking about Kara possibly winning, and I would be okay with that. But I don't know if that would be exciting. Let's
see. Worse would be like Mike White winning against like Angelina and Allison.
Yeah, so that was the 3 I was going to bring up as I think actually being the worst, because Allison, despite the fact she's been talked as a threat, I haven't seen enough from her in terms of what she's done. So, I feel like if she's getting to the end with those 2, it's probably just off an immunity run. Or maybe not. I mean, maybe she does do more, and it's not, and she takes hold of a strategic game. But the one move that I feel like I saw her make strategically was she bonded with Gabby, and she talked about how she did that, because she wanted to move against Dan and she wanted bonds on the other side.
And then she didn't do.
Right. I mean, and I feel that the Allison game has been much more of the turning down the moves. When you were in power and then doing them when you're not. Whereas Kara was much more willing to make a move when she was in power, as we saw when she basically was ready to make that move and then Allison said no.
Which, to be clear, making, staying with the status quo when you're in power and then trying to change it up when you're not is not a bad way to play. It's just not a fun way to play.
Exactly. And that would be my complaint.
I actually, I kind of like Allison, but in a very sort of neutral, like, she's pleasant.
I like her as a person.
She seems fine. It might be residual, like, oh, she kind of looks like Darcy Carden, where I'm just like, so I have warm feelings towards her.
Right. Speaking of which, if you watch The Good Place tonight, it's a good Darcy Carden episode.
It hasn't happened for me yet.
Oh, I was saying if you do, afterwards.
I hopefully will.
Okay. But actually, a low-key bad scenario might be the 4 people in Nick's alliance just kind of sticking together, and then and Nick,
then Davey loses during fara,
or they vote Davey out at 5, and then it's just like it's like Nick, Mike, Angelina, and Kara at final 4, and it's like, oh, so like Nick's probably just gonna win in a landslide at the end, like that.
Right, like. I didn't like my kind of first thought when you said what's the worst scenario is like was Nick winning, but I feel weird about saying that because I think he has made some like very smart moves.
No, I think Nick's played a very good game.
He really has. But for some reason, and if not even really just extracurricular stuff, like I just don't connect with him. And so I think that's it. Like
it might be the extracurricular stuff, but I think it's also that Nick his game is quiet in a lot of ways. He has been thinking about the stuff, but his game has mostly been in the relationships. But also, if Nick wins at this point, it's kind of just like the expected outcome in some ways, because he has an alliance of 4, and they just vote Christian, Allison, Kara, or, Davey, maybe they switch Davey with one of them off in order, and that's it. And that's his path to the end, and then he wins. And it's like, okay. I guess.
It's just not exciting. It's just like,
right.
I would never say he wouldn't have deserved it.
Exactly. He would be a very deserving winner to a fun season, but it would not be a fun win necessarily. And I think that's more my objection to a Nick win. So
that because it's been something where I haven't really been able to put my finger on it, and I think you're right that it's just kind of expected. It's sort of been the top one that people have been talking about for a while. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe if I wasn't seeing, even not doing Edgic, if I wasn't seeing what other people were saying, it wouldn't even occur to me. And it would be fine, but just everyone be like, oh, Nick's definitely win. It's the same reason why you started hating Michelle. It's not just that she hasn't done that much, but it's that everyone was being like, Michelle is definitely winning. You're an idiot if you don't think Michelle's winning, isn't it?
Also they were saying that, and she was not getting the content to support why she would win on the show. She was getting enough visibility to understand why people would say that, but she wasn't getting the content that shows why she would be a good winner. I think Nick's getting the content to show why.
And again, I want to say, as I said for Carrot, Nick is not a Michelle. He's not playing that kind of game. It's just sort of the way we as our little community don't love hearing that much edit. It's just it's one thing to be I think Nick is winning because he's playing well, but it's another thing this is clearly, these are all the reasons why it's definitely this, and there are no other options. That just kind of end up then I want someone else to win out of spite.
Right. So another thing we've been doing on the podcast this season is our season check-in. I know we've talked a lot about everything that's happened. Do you have anything new to add, or should we just kind of go to our predictions?
Yeah, it's been a fun season. Hope that the finale is exciting.
Yeah, I hope next week's exciting too. Let's not cut that short.
But it's just, that's sort of the other thing with oh, what are we hoping for? It's now that the finale is final 6, so much can still happen. Cambodia, you have the 0 votes count. Saint Juan del Sur, you have that.
Oh, you mean Cambodia, the worst season ever, according to some people?
The most mediocre season, and that's definitely something to rail against because you like it slightly less than other people do.
Anyway,
Or like Finn Wendell, sir, the has the like Jacqueline. Did you vote for who I told? Like that is the standout moment of that season.
Or last season, not a good season, actually had a really good finale. It was like the one good episode they had, but it had a really good finale. So, I wouldn't mind.
The merge episode was also very good.
That's true, because that was the Chris Noble episode.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Lest we forget.
I will not forget. I am sorry. But no, I mean, I agree. This is a good season. I'm really enjoying everything. You heard me talk about this a couple weeks ago. I think I've been on frequently enough that I don't need to check in on what I'm liking, so let's go to predictions. Who do you think's going home next week?
Gosh, it's crazy because like you can't even really use next week as a guide because they mentioned so many people. Even though everyone is like saying, Nick is probably going to win. I saw like 2 people said that they had to vote out Nick, whereas in the rest of the previews, they only like one other person was like, we have to vote Christian, we have to vote Davey. Granted, the scene of Mike saying it has to be you is definitely Mike talking about what other people are saying. He's not that dumb. So that means if he's hearing about it, Nick probably has we know Nick has an idol, so he might be playing it, which means I think now is when Allison sort of finally like limps out of the game.
I think that's what I'm predicting too. I think that Christian for some reason is immune. Maybe he wins, or maybe just or maybe people are like, oh, well, now Christian is not something to worry about.
Yeah, now he doesn't have an idol, so it's fine.
Or an ally, Christian might just be like a free floater, and they're like, oh, we can pick him off anytime. Maybe we want to make sure we get out of the Goliath. Or everyone tries to rally him against Nick, and he's like, yeah, sure. And Nick is like, oh, I'd rather get this person out there. So, I actually agree. I think it's Allison. The one person I'm tempted to say, which I really hope it isn't, is I could really see it being Davey. I could see kind of like an alliance coming together, trying to flush Nick's idol and actually voting for Davey. And that would make me really sad.
That would be sad.
Because, as I said, I really like Davey. I'm rooting for Davey. So, I guess we've reached the end. So, if you want to find us, you can find us at purplerockpod.com. The show Twitter.
I think it's actually Purple Rock
Podcast.com. Yeah, I was jumping ahead to the show Twitter, which is Purple Rock Pod. I am Purple Rock Matt. You are Purple Rock Emma. You can follow us and subscribe. We're on YouTube here. We are on a bunch of podcatchers, which I've forgotten. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to the leader of the Pick 4 League, which is the aptly named team. John is a Dum Dum. They're doing, that team is doing very well. They've been on top for a couple of weeks. I want to make sure that people know that John is a Dum Dum is number 1. So anything else?
You're only doing well because I didn't do fantasy this year.
I don't know why you're saying that's my team. That team is John is a Dum Dum.
It says parentheses Matt next to it. Do you think we can't read?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe people aren't following that aspect of it. But John is a Dum Dum.
I never did well in Pick 4, so it's definitely not why you're winning.
Yeah. So John is a Dum Dum, number 1. Just want to make sure everyone knows that. Anything else you got to add?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hit theme music.